Great. Good day, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's Folio Forum. My name is Peter Murray, and I'm the open source community advocate at Index Data and the host for today's event. Our topic today is getting started with Folio reporting. This session, like all Folio forums, is being recorded and will be posted to the Open Library Foundation YouTube channel. Please use the YouTube chat box to ask questions or make comments. I'll be holding the questions until the end to ask our panelists. If you like to tweet, please use the hashtag FolioForum, and I'll pose those questions and comments to the panelists as well. We have 5 speakers today, and we will be getting started with Nassar from Index Data.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Thank you for everyone for joining us. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce these talks. Almost all of the report development in Folio has been performed not by a software engineer, but by volunteers from the reporting community. And they have done extraordinary work. We're going to hear from a few of them today, presenting work they and their colleagues have completed over the past few months. And we hope that beginning with this Folio forum, you will start to get comfortable with the tools and try interacting with some of the reports. These talks today will focus on the 1.0 release of Folio reports, which will be available in a release branch in March. The reports run on top of a database environment that is generated by the Library Data Platform, or LDP software. If you don't have an LDP instance deployed at your library, we maintain a public LDP test instance, and I would invite you to use it to get familiar with the environment. You'll also need a database tool to run these reports. Our favorite is the community edition of dbeaver, which is open source, and I think the presentations this morning are going to be using that tool. There are 2 types of queries that will be covered. The first type produces what we call derived tables. These are queries that run every night and generate tables that are easier to report on than the original Folio data tables. So the main purpose of this is to support ad hoc reporting, which was a major reporting requirement expressed by the Folio community. The second type of queries are report queries, or simply reports. These are basically predefined reports. They are the same reports that some of you have been prioritizing or ranking. The talks today will not be covering the LDP software, but that project is planning to release a new version soon with several new features. This will include near real-time streaming of data from Folio, ERM and MARC data, and support for both the Folio and Reshare projects. So with that background, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Jennifer Eustis is the metadata librarian at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. For the Folio project at the 5 College Consortium, Ms. Eustis is the lead of the bibliographic merge working group. So, thank you. So I'll just turn it over to Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. So let me share my screen because we have a presentation to share with you today. Here we go. Let me actually getting Zoom boxes out of the way. And here we go. Can everyone see my screen? Yes?
Yes, looks good.
Thank you, Peter. So again, my name is Jennifer Eustis from UMass Amherst, which is in Western Massachusetts. I am a member of the Metadata Management Reports Working Group. I know that's a mouthful, so if I kind of stumble on these words later on, please excuse me. Today, I'm going to be presenting on the members of this working group, kind of how we got started and kind of the philosophy of our working group. I will then talk about what we've been doing, updates, and I will give two demos, one on a derived table that we worked on, instances extended derived table, as well as a report that we just submitted, the shelf list report. So let's get started. I would really like to acknowledge all of these people. Some have only attended a couple times, and then we have our frequent flyers to the Metadata Management Reports group. Especially, I'd like to give a shout out to Laura Daniels, who set up our working group and takes care of our meetings and Zoom and all of that from Cornell, and Christy Thomas from the University of Chicago, who launched the Hoppy Trust report when we did not have derived reports. And she is a great resource for SQL. I'd also like to acknowledge Amelia Sutton, who is a reviewer now of reports for our submit development process through GitHub. And of course, if you are not on this list, I do apologize. You can give a shout out in the comments on YouTube. So the working group began because obviously the reporting SIG needed subject matter experts to offer prototypes or basically what type of reports were needed with FOLIO. But our metadata management working group also came together in terms of being an inclusive and collaborative learning community. And what I mean by that is that we really wanted to learn from each other. We have different levels of SQL knowledge. For example, I'll just take myself. I am a beginner SQL person, which is very good that I'm first in this presentation because my SQL is a little more basic than others, but you can still participate in the working group. We accept everyone, whether or not you know SQL or not, and we are definitely here to be a resource for each other as we learn not just SQL, but also the FOLIO data structure. So what have we been working on? Obviously, derived tables. This has been a big part of what we've been working on. Our derived tables include right now everything in terms of FOLIO inventory records, so instances, holdings, and items, and all the information that you would find in those records. LDP MARC is in development, so everything here that I'm presenting just really concerns the FOLIO inventory records. We've also done a shelf list report and refactoring the pick list. Refactoring just means here that it was done before the derived tables, so we updated it so that it included the derived tables. And I'd especially like to thank the members of the working group, as well as Axel, Angela, and Amelia for their help on getting the shelf list and pick list reports up to snuff. We are currently working on duplicate orders report, and we will be working on the Hoppy Trust reports going forward. And of course, learning SQL from each other is a big part of our meetings. So now I'm going to go off into the demo. This is really the kind of the meat of where my presentation is. I do have some slides here just in case technology wasn't working, but if you review these later on, at least you will have these as templates. So I am going to exit presenting mode, and I am going to go to dbeaver, which is the community edition, which is what I use to connect to FOLIO Snapshot. So I do my testing off of FOLIO Snapshot, as well as some of the dated snapshots if I need particular data. So I want to first point out kind of the importance of derived tables. And here I just wrote a quick select statement, select all the columns from inventory instances. And inventory instances, you'll see here's snapshot, And if you go down to public, this is the table that is right here. And this has various columns attached to it. And I already ran it. I can run it again. Here's how you do that in dbeaver. And let's take a look at the results. So here, things that obviously shouldn't be a surprise. We get the ID, which is the UUID. Remember, these are instances, so FOLIO instances, the version of this record, the catalog date. This is sample data in Snapshot, so it is normal not to have information that is filled out, whether it's suppressed from discovery, the instance HRID, but I'd like to highlight these type of IDs: instance type ID, mode of issuance ID, as well as status ID here. Notice that the names are not associated in these public FOLIO tables. And so unless you memorize all of these UUIDs, you really have no idea what this refers to. And so that is really what we wanted to accomplish with the extended. So right now I'm looking at the derived table for instances extended, which you can find, I will scroll up, in FOLIO reporting tables, and here it is. And to get this, I right-clicked on it and did view data, and it pops up this nice view of all the data. So unlike the public FOLIO data table for inventory instances, this derived table has, of course, the UUID, the HRID, but more importantly, the type UUID along with its associated name. I think in metadata, we work more in terms of filtering of, I need all the text, or I need, my maybe VHS or DVDs or any two-dimensional moving image. I'm looking for my serials for serials work, and I need things that have been cataloged. So this is all in this table, which makes it really easy to get to. Another thing that the derived tables offer us is that we've extracted data from, I like to call them the JSON blobs. That's my unique name for them. So if we go back to, where was it? Oh, here it was, sorry about that. To the select instances, and let me just, you'll notice here this data blob, and it's very hard to see. You can right click and open with the web browser. Some people don't like this view. I do, only because it does offer a different view into it. And here's what it looks like on the web browser, and here's the ID. So everything that is I'll call it kind of a standalone here, is in this JSON data. But you also have things that are not in the standalone that are really important for metadata, like classification, electronic access, identifiers such as OCLC, ISBN, canceled ISBN, and things like that. So the derived tables also extract all of this data so that you don't have to do that yourself. And that is really, really important. So, and this is where we find all of our derived tables. We have them at the holdings level, which comes first in alphabetical order, the instance, and then the item. So you can see here that we have item notes, statistical codes, holdings, instances. It's really to break apart the JSON and also associate the ID and name together. So that's what I wanted to highlight with that demo. And if you have Snapshot, these are already available. If not, you can also find them on GitHub. And that is what I'm going to share in my second demo on the FOLIO shelf list. So if you go to FOLIO GitHub, actually, let me. So here we're at folio.org and the repository for analytics. This is where we keep all of our data and where things get reviewed and all of that good stuff for the community. And in SQL, you can find all of our derived tables in this folder, and the report queries are here. And here is the shelf list query. So our queries come with a README file. This README file says whether it's been tested with a brief description and kind of a sample of what it looks like, along with any parameters in the report. If you click on here, you can get to kind of this view of what this looks like. So let's say you need the shelf list for what you're doing at your institution. You can obviously download the entire repository for Folio Analytics, but if you need just this single report, you can click on Raw and highlight and copy and paste, and then bring this into the Beaver. And so here I have an open editor. So I just paste it there, voila, and I can run it. Oh gosh, it did run. Sorry, it's just the, did it? Okay. So let me go through what this is doing. So all the reports have kind of comments in terms of what the filters are doing, and also the fields included and from which table. This parameter section is really for those to tailor each report template for your institution. Now, obviously, Montoya College, City Campus, for example, UMass Amherst doesn't have any of these. We do have OCLC, but you do have to tailor this report for your institution and your data. So these comments are meant to kind of make you aware of what type of data goes in here. And you can leave them blank, or you can add them, for example, ISBN. And again, if your data has ISBN in lowercase, you will have to adapt for that. I know in Folio Snapshot, it is uppercase. And so you can leave them blank or add them. Let me go on to the next section. This is relying on the derived table library locations. What's really neat about this derived table is that location, campus, library, and institution were in 4 different tables in Folio, the public table that was provided. And so this derived table brings them all together. And so it's really easy to get them in one place at one time. The original prototype for shelf list included loan information. Obviously, if you don't need this, you can just take it out. And again, this is relying on derived tables for the loan information. The prototype or the story for shelf list also included contributors to include the name and whether or not it was primary. And here we're relying heavily both on holdings instance and the instance contributor derived tables. So here's the main select, and this is what you see in the results. So the item ID, which is the UUID, the HRD, and of course, status name, material type name, as well as, so this is a really big report. And here are the from, which we're taking both from our temporary tables here, as well as any filters that people put in. The filters for the location and the identifier are here. You can leave them empty or fill in what you need. This shelf list also presupposes that you want everything that is discoverable by users, whether that is an item, holdings, or instance record. So let me see, it did run, but for some reason, I'm not seeing.
Jennifer, yeah, there you go, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. I have many backups just in case something doesn't work. So here is, I ran it with the filter of ISBN, and here is all of the results that match that filter of ISBN. So I can change it to blank, and here it's running. And obviously this is a much larger set because I don't have any filter anywhere. Notice that the shelf list does require OCLC, but in the snapshot data, which changes frequently, there's very rarely an identifier type of OCLC. I don't know why. That just happens. So I tend to run this off of ISBN, at least in my test. And so with dbeaver, you can, also do it in order of HRID and all of that. So that is the shelf list. And hopefully maybe you have questions that you want to look at the end. And that is my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer Eustis. Angela Zoss works at Duke University Libraries in the Assessment and User Experience Department. She has been a member of the FOLIO reporting SIG since the fall of 2018. And she helps organize the SIG's query development work and documentation in the areas of resource access and user management. Ms. Zoss.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Jennifer, for such a wonderful introduction that will cover a lot of things that the rest of us will also be talking about. And I'm excited to share a little bit more about another working group we have, which is the Resource Access and User Management Working Group. Slides are loading. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. So the Resource Access and User Management Working Group is made up of myself, Vandana Shah, and our wonderful subject matter experts, Joanne Leary and Shayla Harrington. And the small but mighty group goes through a process, much like all the other groups, of taking original report requests from the community, deduplicating them to make sure that we're only creating the queries that are absolutely needed, prioritizing those based on the rankings from the UX prod issues, iterating through the development of the queries that we're writing in SQL with feedback from subject matter experts and the community, and then publishing those queries in the repository that you've already seen. So that's the basic work we do in our group. And our group meetings are definitely all about sharing and learning from each other and getting better at the query writing and development process, and figuring out how to create queries that are going to be easy for the broader FOLIO community to run and to use. In general, the queries that we're writing in resource access and user management cover a series of broad categories. And so one of them, under the resource access moniker, you might see queries related to circulation, requests, the kind of messaging that happens to patrons through notices, interlibrary loan, fines and fees, and then reserves. Increasingly, we're also expecting to be pushing into user management soon. And so we'll have some user management queries like when accounts expire, different kinds of permission sets for users, and data validation for user account information. So these are sort of broad topics that our queries might cover. I want to do a little bit of a drill down today into realistically our largest area and the one of the highest priority, which is circulation. So many of the highest priority reports in resource access have something to do with circulation. They can cover a variety of related areas, like the overall circulation of a collection, circulation of particular parts of the collection, so filtered by things like material type or by owning library, circulation to particular groups of people, often the patron group, circulation burdens at different particular service points, so how heavily staffed does a particular service point need to be at different times of the day. Also identifying problematic circulation patterns, especially missing items. And then all of these areas are so closely related that we started looking at the actual requests from the community, and we started noticing a lot of similarities. So while Jennifer covered the use of derived tables to simplify the data that's coming out of FOLIO and maybe expand these complicated JSON blobs, or make some common connections between tables like the locations tables, we are also using derived tables for sort of Uber queries, for like the umbrella queries that will end up being useful for many of our report queries down the road. And so that's the one I want to show today when I do our focus on a derived table. Our derived table that is doing the most work right now is called loans items. And that's because in all of these circulation queries, the core elements are elements from the loans tables and elements from the items table. So we have that primary relationship between the elements in loans and the elements in items. But for all of these different flavors of circulation queries, we might need very different elements. So depending on who we're thinking about circulating to, we'll probably need the patron group item, which is attached to loans. We will maybe also need the material type that's attached to items. And just like Jennifer mentioned, each of these are stored as identifiers, and we need to link out to get the actual names of these items. So that's part of the work that's happening in this derived table. Then we might want to know a little bit more about where the item is housed. And so we have the permanent location and the temporary location. We have additional information attached to permanent location because that location tends to do extra duty in circulation queries. So we have that expanded up to the library, campus, and institution level. We might also want the effective location of the item at the time of the loan, which is stored in the loan table. And then we have to link out to get the names. We might want the checkout and check-in service point if it's a staffing query, and so on and so forth. We really end up with this very complex umbrella query that if you had to write all of these joins into every circulation query you were writing, it would be enormous. It would be hard to follow. It would be hard to debug. And it's just going to take longer because the data sets we're working with in terms of loans and items can be enormous. So we wanted to have this large umbrella query running regularly. Right now, the derived tables run overnight for our test instance, and many institutions, I think, will set that up. And that just means it's going to pre-calculate all of these joins and all of the connections to names and all of the complicated data structure, so we don't have to worry about that. So as has been mentioned, these derived tables themselves can serve a lot of query needs. You could just go into the derived table, download that data, and do any work that you want in Excel or in other tools based on the derived table. We're going to show one example here of moving beyond the derived table and using it in a query that makes it a little bit more specific and tailored. And that report query is ACRL circulation. I'm showing the joins that are needed by this query. There are none. It's just the one table because the loans items query is so efficient. We can just take that big, massive umbrella query and we can limit it down to just what we need for ACRL circulation. So the code that runs this particular report query, which is an annual statistic style report for the ACRL annual statistics. And so it will give us general information about our circulation patterns over the course of a year. In truth, you probably only need one number, which is the total number of circulations. But we like to report back some details that might be helpful for debugging in case that number looks a little weird. We don't want to just give you that total. We want to give you the information you need to make that total. And the report query is going to look very similar to what Jennifer showed, but I'll walk through it step by step. Here's our sample output. So it's got, of course, columns and rows. It's got things like the date range we're filtering down to, specific loan date for that particular loan. So this is individual loans for that entire year or the entire range that you're running a query for. And then we've got things like the patron name, the patron group name, the material type name, the permanent location name for that item, the temporary location name for the item, the effective location name, institution name for that permanent location, campus name for the permanent location, and library name for the permanent location. This way you can filter down to a particular library if that's what you're interested in, or a particular campus, or a particular material type. So the query starts with a parameter section, just like Jennifer's, and predominantly we're editing the date filters. We also have a material type filter and location filters. So for example, when you want to edit the parameters to tailor this query, after you copy it from our GitHub repository and paste it into a query tool like dbeaver, you just type in these fields, you change the dates to whatever you want, you use the same format, and then all of these that are empty right now, you could fill in with an example. So we have, for example, in the comment here, the name main library works on our test data. So that might be a suggestion to get started filling in those filters. Also note that each of these lines has the word as in capitals and then a new word after that. And that word after that becomes the name of our column. So if for some reason you don't like our column headers, you can actually just change them. You can just write them, write them in the query, and that'll update. Inside the main body of the query, this is what builds that table. It specifies what columns we want in what order. The first thing that we have is actually a custom column where we insert the values that were typed in for the date filter. So we actually just turn those values into a text field and it gets added to every row. So you know right away when you're looking at this report what the date filter range was. Finally, we've got, just columns listed, and those are all being selected from the same table. So they just have the name of the column as it was listed in the original table. And then sometimes we rename that column to make it a little bit easier to read. And then at the bottom of our select statement, it's just the source table, which is our big loans items derived table. And because it's a derived table, it's coming from the FOLIO _ reporting group of tables, which is called a schema. Finally, we have our filters at the bottom, and our filters are, again, very similar to Jennifer's. We start with the filter to make sure that the loan date is in between our date filters, and each additional filter is just pulling from the remaining filters in our parameter statement at the top. And so if you have changed any of those location filters, then it will go ahead and limit the results to just those locations. And I will do a very, very quick demo in dbeaver, since you have already seen dbeaver and are getting used to what that looks like. But here's our full query. It looks a little bit different because it's not formatted the way I had them in the slide, but all the SQL should be the same. And then I usually also just run it using these buttons on the side. And just like with Jennifer's, the results aren't showing up right away, but it's because the window's been minimized and there's this little tiny arrow. So if I hit the arrow, I can see the data window again. And that can be very tricky. Sometimes I have to go up into SQL editor and toggle the results panel. But usually we can find it again. And that's what the results look like. Again, this is our test data set, so there aren't that many loans in this date range, but it gives us a sense of whether the query is working properly. And I'll stop there.
Okay, great. We lost Nassib for a moment. And so Sharon, I believe you're next, or is it Axel? Sharon?
Yep.
Very good.
Okay.
And if I don't have your introduction, if you could introduce yourself for a moment too, please.
Oh, okay, sure. Hi, I'm a systems analyst in the Cornell library and charged with working to coordinate our local reporting group there, getting ready for our FOLIO implementation. I'm also the convener for the reporting SIG for FOLIO, so very pleased to be here. I'm also one of the leads for the resource management reports working group along with Scott Perry. And so I'd like to talk about our membership. We have these wonderful members who come together and meet weekly to work on resource management reports, and I'm going to demonstrate one for you today in a couple of LDP instances. So I want to give a special shout out to Axel and to Scott, who have helped tremendously with the orders query that I'm going to demonstrate today. And also everyone else has contributed to making sure that this is a good query. So thank you so much, everyone. All right. So for resource management, the reports that we do in this area cover finance, accounting, acquisitions, orders, vendors, claims, funds, all of these different finance related areas of the library. We also, because we do expenditures, counts, we tie in with annual statistics type reporting. So we have parts in that ACRL query that you saw. It's interesting because there are reports that cut across all the groups. ACRL is one of them, and so we all have different parts of that we're working on. So the work that we've been doing is prioritized by the members of the reporting SIG. So those are all FOLIO participating institutions who've indicated which are the most important to get running first. So for resource management, that really breaks down into two general areas: cost reports and count reports. So on the cost side, we've been working on invoices, orders. We'll be starting funds soon. And the ACRL expenditures report has just been drafted by our Nancy Bulldog, so that we're looking forward to that. We also have created derived tables to support these queries for the larger reports. Over on the count side, we have created the titles, items, reports are out, and we're working on subscriptions and ACRL titles and ACR volumes. And again, there are derived tables that support all of those. So in addition to learning SQL, as Angela and Jennifer were saying, we've been really focusing too on understanding the FOLIO data. This is a real good way to take a deep dive into that as we move forward, is working with those data elements in the queries. Okay, so for this query, the purpose is to create a report providing some details about purchase orders. It allows filtering by date, subscription range, order type, tags, and workflow status. And then we aggregate those results by the purchase order line number, acquisition method, acquisition unit name, and material type. So you get a chance to see that. There are two main tables involved that we pull the data from. These are pre-existing tables, and then there are additional derived tables. So the PO lines table, we take data elements from, and then we have 4 derived tables listed that are, oh, sorry, let me move the slide. There we go. Then we have 4 derived tables that are from PO lines, and from the PO purchase orders table, we have 3 derived tables taken from that. So all of those will be in that query. So for just as an example of a derived table, we take from the purchase order lines table the purchase order line. We use the purchase order line ID, the physical material type ID, and the physical material type name. Those get derived from the data array, or as Jennifer was describing, the data blob in the purchase order lines table. So that's how we're going to get that. Okay, so just taking a closer look at the derived table for PO lines physical material type. You can see here that this is creating the derived table. This is going, we're basically going to be pointing to that table from inside the orders query. Okay, now going just to the orders query itself. First, we set our parameters, and so this is setting ourselves up, as you saw in the previous queries, to filter by date or tags or subscriptions or workflow status or order type. So that's the first step. For the first part of this query, we create a temporary table to bring in the details from the PO lines table. Here in the select statement, we specify the columns that are going to be needed and the source table in the from statement. Then we make the joins to the derived tables that I mentioned earlier to get the additional columns that are needed. We create a second temporary table to get the purchase order details. Then we select the columns that are needed from the source table and specify the source table in the from statement. And then again, we have joins for the derived tables for the additional columns that are needed from the data arrays. In our main query, we select the columns that are needed from the source tables, and it's coming from the temporary table, and there's a join to the second temporary table. And then again, as you saw before in the previous queries, in our where statement, this is where we have specified our parameters. So this shows how the filter by workflow status works. So if you specify something, it will pull in just that data, or you could show all. And same thing for order type, and so on. In the end, we do a grouping by these columns that aggregate the results. Okay, so I'm going to show you this in dbeaver. So I'm also going to show you exporting the results to Excel, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that we'll be able to connect to both Folio Snapshot and Cornell's test LDP instance. Okay, we are in the Folio Snapshot reference reporting environment, and I've, just as Jennifer demonstrated, brought the orders query from the Folio Analytics report repository into dbeaver. And here I'm just going to run, and my results are showing here with the appropriate groupings and column headings. And if I want to take that into Excel, I just need to click on the Excel button. And very nicely, it creates a spreadsheet for me that I can use as I wish. Okay. I'm going to jump over. So you'll see here, these are the results that we have from Folio Snapshot. So we have small data sets in Folio Snapshot. At Cornell, we just had the data migration group has been working with purchase orders. And so there's quite a bit of data on purchase orders. So you'll see a difference in the result set. Okay. Just a sec, I have to, it has logged me out. Okay, now we're looking at the Cornell University test LDP. And again, I have brought in the orders query, just as I did in dbeaver, connecting to FOLIO snapshot. So I'll go ahead and run this. It's the same exact query. Okay, I'm going to bring this window up a little bit. Whoop. Let's see if I can just drag that down. Yeah, the results are hiding. So here we have the result set. As you can see, it's a little bit more extensive here. Again, once I have the data that I need, I can do an export to Excel. And there I have my result set. And I can save that and use it as I wish. Okay, and that's all I've got.
Thank you, Sharon, Beltaine, and I apologize for the technical difficulties on my part. Axel Dörrer has been working as project coordinator for FOLIO at Mainz University Library since February 2020. Before that, he worked at the Hessian Library Network and the University Library Frankfurt on various DFG funded projects. Mr. Dörrer.
Thank you, Nassib. So let us share my screen. You see the screen? Yes. Okay, thank you. So this is our last subgroup, the electronic, which relates to the electronic resource management, or the data that we are seeking for our reports, and that's one of the main subjects of our groups to see where the data for the ERM comes from and where we want to tackle that and take our hands on that and have the analytics on that. So I'm really happy to have, we have some really familiar names here, but also there are some names that are not attending in the other groups, and I'm really happy to have them there. At least we have a really good expertise from the ERM team with Owen, so thanks for joining on these things here, and to all the other members too, certainly. So we have, as the other groups have clustered their reporting issues into several clusters, we did that too. And as you see here, we have at the moment 6 clusters, and we have attached them to the several releases of FOLIO Analytics. And to make this clear why we have this released, I have a second slide on here, a more graphic way to show what data is affected by which cluster. And so we see we have the first 2 clusters about ERM inventory count and ERM inventory costs that have the inventory and the invoices and orders app in and their storages. And as we have them at this time in the library data platform, and we were able to do the queries on the data, on the test data on that, we decided to start on these for the release 1.0. And we also have some data in the agreements and knowledge base, which is great because they were funded. Is our test data came from Leipzig, and we have some test data from Cornell. And I would like to thank reach out to these institutions and thank for their contribution for that. That was really helpful for the group and for the development and the beginning of the development of these two clusters. But as at this time, these the storage of the agreement and knowledge base is not loaded automatically. It will be done in the next release of the LDP platform. And but there is at this time there is a sneak preview on that, and I can say I can say that it is possible that we will have this data in the next release, and we are really looking forward for that. So, and the last thing is the e-usage, and there's at this point there is a little bit more things to do, and there is a working group just right now working on that, on the ERM e-usage and cost project to bring in-app reports to that. And I think this is something that has to be developed, and it's better to tackle that in a later stage. Perhaps to make this more visible, I have here a third slide, which show the different layers that will be affected by all these things, and to see that we have the invoice. This is the reportings that are based on the agreement app, and as we see that we have this blue things already in there, and we have the green one, the green things that connect these modules. We see here that the connection between the knowledge bases and the e-usage will be done by resource identifiers, and these things is a really tricky thing, and will be tackled by this work group. So this is the reason that we say we will take a little bit delay on this and see what will happen. But the good news is that all this data will be available. All the blue data will be available, and the green data will be available in the LDP soon. So for today, I just want to say what to show what we have already done now for the FOLIO Analytics 1.0. This is one of these queries is the ERM Inventory Cost query, and we have here the invoice layer, the cost layer, we have the orders layer, and we have the resource layer. And this is these are the things that we just have in here. And we saw a lot of queries and how to deal with the derived tables, and therefore I just want to show this time a little bit more specific things what you can do with data when you're jumping in. So what we have here, we want to have the filters, as we already saw that. We want to filter on a start and end date, and as there's no payment date at the moment here, we are taking the approval date as a substitute, as long as this is not there. And then we have several levels of filters, and just to have this as a more convenient thing for somebody who want to customize this query. So we have the filter on the invoices, on the invoice level, on the invoice line level, the purchase order level, and the instance level, which is really interesting because we want to bring in, and this is one of the sub-queries, we bring in some details that we might tie to an invoice and the expenditures to have more insights on how the expenditures will be can be showed on attributes of instances. So what we're taking in here is the instance formats, the instance subjects. We take in the location from the holdings, and then this is something I just pulled in for further calculation, which might be something that you might know. So what I'm doing here is to count how many subjects is tied to an instance to make later perhaps a more insight to divide the costs by subjects on instances. So this is. So I want to jump into the main query for that now. And as you can see, I was bringing up here the instance subject, and here I'm doing the calculation on that. So what I've here to avoid a division by 0, I have brought in this case when clause to make sure if the divisor is 0, so this this query won't crash. So it just returns the null if there's a 0 in the divisor. And then I was bringing in the invoice totals, and then we have another adjustment that comes from the invoice. We have the invoice line total, and we have the invoice adjustment total, and this is the derived tables that comes from the invoice level. So we have the total of this invoice line, and then we divided this up by the number of subjects. So we have the total of a subject later. So when we see that here, this is the result, and I will show this later in the other thing too, or might be no, just to show that here. We have the instances, the instance subjects mentioned here, and you just see how the total by subject might be, and you might group later on the subject to have a divide a number of amount of by a subject later on. Sorry. So what we have as well, we have the invoice line totals, and we have perhaps I just can show this up just to see that there is a lot more of things. I just wanted to highlight how to bring to play a little bit around with all these attributes. So what this query is also showing up, it's the PO line, the ID, the invoice line ID, the approval date, the substitute for the payment date at the moment. We have the order format, we have the mode of issuance, we have the adjustments, the data on adjustments, and furthermore, we have the invoice line subtotal and totals. And at the end, we have the instance subjects. And this is just a start to make the people aware how to play with the data, how to gain more experience, how to bring data together and make divisions that does not come right out of the box of FOLIO and the FOLIO apps. So that's it, I think. Thank you. And
thank you, Axel Dörrer. And thanks again to all of our speakers. I also wanted to mention Eric Pennington and Todd Olson, who are two of our code reviewers not mentioned on previous slides, but they also helped with some of these queries. Before we turn to questions, we wanted to show the URL for this project. There it is. We also have a special interest group on reporting in the FOLIO community. The group is chaired by Sharon Beltaine, whom you heard from earlier, and she's a very welcoming and diligent organizer. So I would invite everyone to join the SIG. They have lots of information about FOLIO reporting and even things like learning resources for SQL. They also do a lot of work on defining reporting requirements for FOLIO. And feel free to reach out to any of us with questions or if you would like to get involved. So once again, thank you all for being here, and our speakers are available to try to answer some questions. So I'll turn it over to our moderator, Peter Murray.
We do indeed have some questions. The first one is about the derived tables. Can we run queries across derived tables? Is there a join? Nassib, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Would anyone like to take that?
Yes. Yes, we can. Yeah, the derived tables themselves actually sometimes even refer to each other. So we have found some of these derived tables to be helpful as building blocks for larger derived tables. The complication of that has forced us to create a solution where we make sure that the derived tables get run in a particular order based on their dependencies, but then also you can pull those, after those queries for the derived tables have run, they produce kind of static tables and they operate just like any of the other data tables in our database. So you can pull them into further queries. So it's got this really great kind of inception nesting opportunity to build off of these helper tables and also join them together in join statements, just like normal tables.
And that technique that Angela just mentioned is really useful way of just getting into the data and exploring the data. So, you don't have to think in terms of creating a single query that generates the report you want. You can explore by creating small queries that generate tables of data and store those tables in the database. There's a local schema area for doing just that, and then do write further queries on top of those data sets. So you can sort of explore the data incrementally that way and explore how you might query the data.
Apologies for the alto saxophone in the background. It's band period right now in remote learning. So I had a question about a JIRA ticket that was a request for creating a report of vendor admin logins. Is that the kind of report that these FOLIO queries can answer? Or is that something that will need to be handled elsewhere, another way?
Does anyone feel like they want to?
I think that's coming from Cornell. I can tell you that we definitely have that on our list, the request that you had made, and we will be looking into how to create that in our work coming up. I can tell you more about how that will work.
Is that data in LDP?
So yeah, I think this may be a question about a permissions report. So Nassib and I have talked a little bit about whether you can gather information on permissions and that sort of thing. So we've just started to look into it. So I'd have to take a look at that part of the development to see what we can and can't do to bring that into the LDP. So To be determined is the quick answer, but it's certainly on my radar for us to create that, because that's something that people are asking for. So I hope I've got the right answer there for.
Let me just add a little bit to that. I think that's exactly right. We do have some configuration data from FOLIO and LDP now in the current version. In the next version of LDP, which we're working very actively on right now, we're using a different method of bringing data over from FOLIO. And so that method will bring over basically everything that's stored in the FOLIO database. So if permissions are stored somewhere in FOLIO, we should be able to get them.
Good point. Good point.
I think the second part of that question was about vendor organization data. We have data on that, and we'll generate reports on that. Yes, that's on our list.
Are those data already in there? Are they already available? I think they are, but I've seen organization data. But
yeah, I think some organization data is there.
Great. We have one final question, and then Sharon, I think you wanted to show something if we had a little extra time. So I'll remind people to use the YouTube chat or the Twitter hashtag Folio Forum to ask questions. The question, though, is about who can run these reports. Is this something that staff will be able to run themselves, or will staff need to ask someone who's to run them on their behalf in the LDP?
So I'll jump in and say that it's actually up to the institution, I think, to decide how they want the database to be set up. I think many institutions are making it very widely available for staff to use to run queries against it. And it's very easy to set it up so that you can run queries, but not accidentally delete any data or tables. So I always like that safety. So it's pretty easy to configure the database such that that's protected, and you can still create these local tables that Nassib mentioned, but not accidentally change anything in the schemas that are being automatically populated. And my guess is that that's how many institutions will want to do it, is just have wide access for staff.
And I just had another thought about that, Angela. We've also been working on a FOLIO app that runs inside FOLIO that can query the LDP database, and that is something, that might be a place where we do something more interesting with user permissions in FOLIO, sort of different levels of access, because that app is tied into the user management system of FOLIO. So that's something that's evolving.
Great. And Sharon, did you want to back up for a moment to go into a little bit more detail about something?
I had skipped this in the interests of time, so I just wanted to be sure to bring it in now that we do have time, unless there are more questions, and we can always take those as well. I just wanted to say that this has been a really great learning process for us, and that the development groups go through a process to create these reports. And I've found that in my planning, I have a list of questions that I use to get from the requirements to the end report. These are those questions. So just thinking about what the purpose of the report is really hard, documenting that, getting that in your requirements, knowing what are we going to use this report for? What data do I need to show? What filters do we need to build into the report? What we're doing here in this work is building a lot of filters into the reports so that people can turn those on and off as they need them, and tailor them as they need them. Also, what assumptions am I making? And I think it's important to stress that we are working hard to provide the documentation that will show the assumptions that have been made in how your FOLIO and LDP environment have been configured. Also, which of those results that really look like? What are we expecting? Checking the data, making sure that the data are correct, and making sure that you've covered everything in the documentation, and thinking about how am I going to use this query at my institution? How might I need to tailor it? So these are just some questions that I wanted to share because they've been a useful outline for me to go through as I look at the next query. Thanks.
That is a great way to end the talk today, I think. Have not seen any other questions come in. So I will say this concludes today's FOLIO forum that explored getting started with FOLIO reporting. You can continue the conversation on discuss.folio.org and on Twitter using the hashtag FOLIO forum. And I'm willing to bet all of today's presenters will be more than happy to talk in more depth about FOLIO reporting. The recording of today's forum will be posted to the Open Library Foundation YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed to that YouTube channel, you can find it by searching for Open Library Foundation. If you have feedback on this forum or have an idea for a future forum, please contact the forum facilitators at facilitators@olay-lists.openlibraryfoundation.org. Thank you to the social media team at EBSCO for live tweeting today's event. And thank you to Nassib, Jennifer, Angela, Sharon, and Axel for sharing their expertise today, and to everyone who asked great questions and added comments. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.